What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Happy New Year to everybody listening to this. We're recording this on the 1st of January, 2025. Hope you all had a great holiday. We have finally made it. We got 1 week of regular season NFL football left before the playoffs. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with us all year. Matt and I are back this week with a fan favorite podcast reviewing our preseason predictions. So we're going to go back and look at our division winners, the wild card teams, all of our bold predictions from our preseason series. We had some really good ones this year. And then we're going to go into a fan favorite segment that we're bringing back for this year, takes we got right and wrong from the preseason. And while there are some really good ones from this preseason, there are some very, very bad ones as well. So we will hold each other accountable for those and probably laugh at each other as well, as we tend to do on this podcast. But before we get started, just a reminder, you can reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Really appreciate you guys listening. We always love to hear from you. Let us know how your bold predictions went this season and send us some info about your fantasy teams. I won my fantasy championship this weekend in large part because my friend Kevin is a silly goose and started the wrong quarterback. But I appreciate that because it helped me win. Let me know how your fantasy season ended. Just a reminder, you do not get spam or newsletters when you email the Fouled Out email address. It'll be me emailing you back, and love to chit chat and talk sports with you guys. So hit us up. But for now, let's grab Matt and let's go look at those preseason predictions. Let's go. All right, Matt is here, fresh off of the holidays and week 17 of NFL football. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing better than Kyle Shanahan.
It's hard to be doing worse right now. Part of me is sad that we only have 1 week of regular season football left.
Yeah.
And then the other part of me is like, I'm kind of ready to be done watching these shitty teams every week. I'm ready to just have a slate of good games in wild card week and have the teams like all be on equal rest and just be like ready to go. And,
Yeah.
I'm tired of watching these shit games. I'm ready for like some good NFL playoff games. We do this pod every year after week 17, where we go back and we review all of our preseason predictions. And we've been doing this ever since the inception of this podcast 4 years ago, because one of the things that's always pissed me off about really just media, like sports media in general, is that in the preseason, all these talking heads and podcasters and TikTokers and all these people just throw out all sorts of ridiculous takes in the preseason, and they're never held accountable for any of the things they say. So the two things that we promised we would do when we started this podcast is, one, that we would never fake takes and like have fake arguments and be like, okay, well, you're going to take this side. Now I'm going to take this side. Right? Like everything we say on this podcast is just like 100% how we feel. No fake stuff.
As
And
evidenced by us being criticized for agreeing too often.
yes. And tenet two of the podcast was that we were going to be held accountable for all the takes that we throw out. The thing that pisses me off is that people will throw out like 10 takes and one of them will be right. And later in the season, they'll just be like, oh, yeah, I called it. See, I said that would happen, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, that's the one you got right and not the 9 you got wrong. So we're going to go over everything we got right and wrong today. And especially going to do that in a fan favorite segment at the end here, good take, bad take, which I had a lot of fun putting together this year because some things were said in the preseason pod by somebody. I'm not going to name names. Somebody said some pretty outlandish shit on the preseason pods. And it might be the producer of this podcast. But so let's get in the time machine. Let's go back. We did 9 preseason pods. We did one divisional preview for each division. And then we did a picks pod where we picked all of the wild card teams. We had previously picked all the division winners. There's bold predictions. There's all sorts of stuff to go over. Looking back right now at the teams we picked to make the playoffs. So the division winners and the wild card teams. Round of applause for Matt. 7 teams have clinched their division so far. Matt had all 7 of them. So you had the Lions, the Eagles, the Rams in the NFC, and then the Ravens, Bills, Texans, Chiefs in the AFC, all to win their divisions.
Yep.
The
And
only one,
then the Falcons are gonna fuck me.
yeah, the only one you have outstanding is the Falcons to win the NFC South, which is still possible, but the Bucks would have to lose to the Saints this week, and the Falcons would have to beat the Carolina Mad Cats.
Come
So
on, Spencer Rattler.
that's not great. That said, some rougher picks for you in the wild card. So you got one wild card so far. You got the Packers in the NFC, and then you had the 49ers and Seahawks, which both teams were eliminated. You had the Bengals, Dolphins, and Colts in the AFC. So still a possibility there to pick one of those up, although it's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, did not do so well in the divisions. I had the Cowboys and the 49ers. So I had the Cowboys, 49ers, Bengals, and Jets to win their respective divisions. They did not do so. I had the Lions, Texans, Chiefs, and Falcons. So we're both waiting on the Falcons, but undoubtedly you're going to beat me in playoff teams. I think you're up by 2 with 1 week left, and I can pick up like one team, and that's the same team we can both pick up. So for win ranges right now, Matt is up by 1. So you have one more right than I do right now, but we both have 6 open this week. So there's still a lot to be determined. And the very difficult thing with win ranges is that it's not like there are 6 teams that we need to win to get them in the range. There are some teams we need to lose to keep them in the range. Like a good example is Matt had the Lions win range this season at 10 to 14 games, a very bullish prediction for the Lions. The Lions have already won 14. So
yeah,
if they beat the Vikings this week, then you don't get the win range because they're too high. There's some of those. There's both of us have a couple that we need the team to lose, and both of us have a couple of the teams we need to win this week. So we'll do a update next week to let you guys know who won that officially. But what you need to know right now is Matt's up 1, but we both have 6 open. All right. One of the best parts of the preseason, bold predictions. Every divisional preview, Matt and I gave a bold prediction for the division. So we both have 8 bold predictions. Matt, you've already hit 1 for this year. You had Jaden Daniels as a top 8 fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, that's right.
He finished as QB4, at least in like a standard QB scoring. I don't know. People have weird scoring systems out there.
Yeah.
So you got 1. I think we have to give you half credit for another as well, because you also predicted that Deshaun Watson would play so poorly that he would get benched. And the fact of the matter is that Deshaun Watson played as literally the worst quarterback we have ever seen this season, but they just didn't bench him.
Counter argument. I never said who had to bench him. It's very clear that God benched him.
God pulled him a little bit too late. He should have done it a while ago, but we're going to give you half credit for that one, because the Cleveland Browns, they just would not admit their mistake this season. We talked for like 5 or 6 straight weeks, every week, about Deshaun Watson setting new lows across the board for like every kind of conceivable statistic you could find.
Yeah, every metric.
I think there was
awful.
There was a point where they were like 0 for their last 49 on third down with him at quarterback or something insane. Like it was just insane shit every single week. So he definitely did play poor enough to get benched, but ends up with a quote unquote injury. So yeah, 1.5 for Matt. I win this because I have already had 2 correct. So I had Rico Dowdle over 1,000 total yards, leading all Cowboys running backs. He's over 1,200 right now with 1 game left to play. it doesn't sound as bold in retrospect, but just a reminder that Rico Dowdle had 500 career yards coming into this season and never went over 1,000 total yards in college, not once, in 4 years at South Carolina. So good season for Rico. I still think the Cowboys are going to find a way to blame him and draft Ashton Jeanty and be like, well, this was the problem, is that our running back who ended up with 1,300 total yards was not good enough. The other the other one I hit is that I predicted that Stephon Diggs would finish outside of the top 48 receivers in fantasy football. This is purely based on luck and the fact that he got hurt and had a season-ending injury after 8 weeks this season, because before he got hurt, he was a top 10 fantasy wide receiver in Houston, finishes as wide receiver 63 because he obviously hasn't put any points up since he tore his ACL. So I hit that one, not the way I intended, but
Asterisk.
We take those here. I also have one more left open. So my prediction for the AFC West was that the Las Vegas Raiders would lead the NFL in roughing the passer penalties. Matt, we got 1 week left to play. The Las Vegas Raiders lead the NFL in roughing the passer penalties with 7 this season. However, there are 4 teams tied for second place with 6. So unless somebody gets 2 roughing the passer penalties this weekend, I'm going to hit it, because even if they tie for the league, I'll take that. But they're in first. They're in first all alone after 17 weeks. So that was one of my favorite ones from the preseason, and I'm so happy that it's about to hit.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Trying to see other ones that we were close on. You had James Cook over 1,700 total yards and 12 touchdowns. He has like 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns right now. So he's been pretty damn good, but he's not going to play this week, so I don't think that he gets there. One I was really disappointed in, I had the Steelers to throw for less yards this year than they did last year. And after Russell Wilson, like before Russell Wilson took over, it looked like it was going to happen. It was very realistic. Yeah. And then Russell, while not setting the world on fire necessarily, upped that average, and they got over 3,163 yards that they had last season.
Well, it's funny because if he played all the games the way he's been playing the last few weeks, probably still would fall under it.
Yeah. He had that one game a couple weeks ago. I forget who they played, but he threw for like 400 yards.
Yeah.
I think that was the dagger. I was like, oh, we're not getting it, because definitely nobody on the Steelers was throwing for 400 yards.
I mean, that was basically giving him an extra game. Like,
yeah. I was like, man, is he that much better than Kenny Pickett? And then I watched what Kenny Pickett did this past week with one of the worst fumbles we have ever seen in NFL history. And I was like, yes, he is that much better than Kenny Pickett. It is time for what everybody is here for. A fan favorite segment from the last couple of years. It is good take, bad take from the preseason. So I went back and listened to all 9 of our preseason podcasts at 1.5 speed so I could get through it over the holidays, which if you put us at 1.5 or even 2 times speed, we sound very silly, especially the theme music at 1.5. But I wrote down basically every good take and every bad take we had and paired them up for this segment. So I'm going to give you a good take that one of us had and a bad take that one of us had. And Matt does not know what I'm about to say. I did not share these with him yet. So all reactions to the take will be live. All right. Good take. I said that this would be the year of rejuvenation for running backs in fantasy football. 14 of the top 20 flex players were running backs in half-point PPR. So running backs definitely dominated this season in fantasy football. Bad take. I said that the Philadelphia Eagles will regret spending money on Saquon Barkley instead of their defense. Saquon Barkley just became, I think, the 9th player ever to rush for over 2,000 yards in a season and would have a shot at breaking the rushing record, but Philly's not going to play him this week. Meanwhile, Philadelphia's defense is number 1 in yards allowed, number 3 in points allowed. So my apologies to the Philadelphia Eagles. Apparently, you guys put your money in the right place, and Howie Roseman knows more about team building than I do.
What's hilarious there is the cognitive dissonance between those two takes.
Yeah, that's why I paired them up, is because I like I won our fantasy championship this weekend, and a large part of why my team was so good this season is because my two big takes in fantasy were I am coming out of the first 4 rounds of the draft with my quarterback, and it's either going to be Allen, Lamar, or Hurts. I was like, I'm leaving with one of those three guys. I don't care what I have to do. And then I was also picking up like 6 running backs. And early in drafts, I drafted Bijan in the first round. I drafted James Cook in the third. I had Brian Robinson in both my leagues, along with like multiple backup running backs. I took as many as I could, basically. And I was like, I'll figure the receivers out later, but I feel like running backs are just going to kill it this year.
Yeah.
And that's what powered my team to the championship, was Lamar Jackson and running backs. Just didn't count Saquon Barkley amongst those. Like it was never that I thought Saquon was going to have a bad season in Philly. I thought he would be good, but I was so concerned about their defense to end last season. And then they addressed it basically by picking up a couple linebackers and drafting a bunch of DBs. And I was like, I just don't think they did enough. And I was very wrong, because Philadelphia did way more than enough.
I think in fairness to you, it is easy to look at what Saquon did in New York and be like, okay, like he'll probably be a little bit better, but like, is that really worth it when you have all these needs on defense? This year really showed just how suppressed Saquon Barkley was in New York, because holy fucking shit.
Yeah. I think the lesson for this season, at least like fantasy wise, is whenever you see one of these high profile running backs, like really talented running backs, leave a very shitty situation and go to a good one, that you want that guy. Because it was Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry.
You pay whatever the price is for that guy.
Josh Jacobs. And you could have easily gotten, like Derrick Henry was going in second rounds of fantasy drafts.
Yeah.
And Saquon was a late first. You could have very easily, if you had a late pick, you could have got Saquon and Derrick Henry and probably Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
Easily. Good take. Both of us agreed that the Minnesota Vikings had a playoff ready roster, but we were both concerned about quarterback. Bad take. I said that giving Sam Darnold the keys to the Vikings offense was like giving my 2-year-old son Maddox the keys to a Ferrari.
Have you given Maddie the keys to a Ferrari yet, though?
I think that if the season has taught us anything, it's that I have to.
Yes.
It's going to go well. Other bad take. Matt, you guaranteed the Vikings would not win more than 5 games if Sam Darnold was the starting quarterback all season. And they might win 15. They might win 10 more than that. So we both agreed that while the Vikings roster was very good, we were concerned about the quarterback situation, and we did not believe in Sam Darnold. So
no,
I think it's probably appropriate that we apologize to Sam Darnold on this podcast.
Just a smidge.
Yeah, we're sorry, Sam. Good take. I said that the NFC North would have 3 playoff teams this season, and that it was the best division in football. Bad take. I said the third playoff team was the Bears.
Yeah.
Yep. Good take. Matt said the Bengals defense was their biggest issue and that it was going to prevent them from winning the division and being a contender. The Bengals defense is currently 29th in points allowed and 27th in yards allowed. Bad take. Matt also said that he cannot see a path for the Steelers winning more than 9 games. Not that bad of a take because they have 10 right now.
Yeah.
But
I was objectively wrong.
Yeah. We had a debate on the AFC North pod. I had their win range, I think at 10 or 11. And you had their win range like going up to 9. And you're like, this is not an over 500 team.
Yeah.
And but like you gave them 9 just because Mike Tomlin's never been under 500, but you were pretty adamant they could not reach 10.
Yeah. Who saw the, albeit brief, Russell Wilson renaissance period, right? Like there was no reason to believe that would happen. Um, but it did. And I would say that if anything, I have learned the lesson to never underestimate a Mike Tomlin coach team. And if I think they could potentially win 9, I should probably pump that number up a little bit.
Yeah. A good thing that we had on that podcast though was that we agreed that because of Mike Tomlin and the Steelers defense, that you have to have an over 5, you have to have 9 in your win range basically.
Yeah.
Like you have to be, okay, yeah, this team can go over 500. Um Good take related to that. I guaranteed the Steelers would be 500 or better this season. Other good and bad takes, Bengals related. Good take. I said that Joe Burrow was going to have the best season of his career and he was going to come out pissed off when he had that like slim shady short blonde haircut.
Yeah.
Bad take. I said that this was a season of conviction and that I was sticking to my guns this season and that I believed in the Bengals as a contender. Oof. And that's when you came in and talked about the defense and that
Yeah.
it was a good take by you because you talked about, and we talked about this later on the podcast, that you look at the Bengals defense when they went to the Super Bowl and then
Mhm.
look at it now and look at all the pieces they've lost. And it's like, it's just like straw after straw. And you said that DJ Reader was going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. And
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, it was this season.
Hmm.
Good take. The Falcons are going to fuck me. It's exactly what happened. I knew it was going to happen in the preseason. I said it on multiple podcasts. And here I am sitting here in week 17 regretting picking the Falcons. Bad take. I said that Tampa was going to take a step back and that the Falcons would beat them in the division this season. Tampa was 9-8 last year. They are 9-7 right now. And somehow Baker Mayfield got even better without David Canales. That was our big concern on the podcast is I was the one that said they would take a step back, but we both agreed that Canales leaving would be potentially really hard on Baker.
Yeah.
Especially with him going from a $3 million contract to a $30 million contract.
Hmm.
Baker Mayfield has 39 touchdown passes right now.
And I will say, like, given the progress that we've seen from Bryce Young, I don't necessarily think that the lesson is that Dave Canales wasn't the reason for their resurgence. I think Tampa wisely made it very intentional that they wanted to continue to do a lot of the same things that made Baker successful when Dave Canales was there. And they filled that OC position with someone who was going to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so like it's wild how an organization made a reasonable succession plan.
You just don't expect it
Yeah,
in today's world that like it's like, oh, wow, they let a really good guy go because they knew what they were doing and they knew they had somebody else who could do the job.
yeah,
And David Canales is coming up again later, but good take. We agreed that the NFL draft should have been a big 4 at receiver and not a big 3 because Brian Thomas Jr. needed
yeah.
to be talked about in the same breath as Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze. BTJ was awesome this season, finishes as wide receiver number 4 in fantasy and leads all rookies currently in yards and touchdowns while playing half of his season with Mac Jones at quarterback. We were very, very correct on BTJ. Bad take. Matt, you said that Jalen Polk would be better than people expected. And he is going to finish his season with 12 catches for 87 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 4 drops. Which I can probably like lump myself in there because I was
Yeah, I was gonna say you were pretty hyped on him too.
I
So
just didn't say it. I didn't say it on the preseason podcast. I This is a vicious cycle for me as I'm N'Keal Harry notwithstanding. Pretty much every receiver the Patriots draft, I'm like, all right, I'm hype. I could see it. He was being comped to Puka Nacua. And turns out that like Nakua is a unicorn and that all of the negative things they said about Puka coming into the draft, that's actually Jalen Polk. He's
Yeah.
like the really bad version of what could have happened with Puka Nakua.
Yeah. God.
And I just, man, watching Lad McConkey go for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns against us this week, I was just like, I fucking hate you guys so much.
Pain.
I was looking at like the fact that BTJ was drafted number 23, and we probably could have tried to trade to get up into there. Xavier Legette, outside of
Yeah.
his taste in Thanksgiving food, has been very good for the Carolina Panthers. Lad McConkey's been good. Keon Coleman's been good. Xavier Worthy's been good. Like all of these good receivers were drafted right around or right before where we had the second round pick or where we could have traded up to reasonably in the first round.
Yeah.
And instead, we traded back, let the Chargers have McConkey, drafted Jalen Polk, who fucking sucks, and drafted Javon Baker, who hasn't played this season with the pick that we got for trading back. I really like, man, if it were up to me, Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo would have already been fired, and Mike Vrabel would already be coaching this team, and we would be getting a real GM in here. But I don't know if I can go through another offseason of this shit, Matt, especially not if we have like the number one pick.
Yeah. There needs to be some wholesale changes.
I don't want to spend too much time on the Patriots, but it's like the same thing we say about rookies is like, it's that old, if they don't bite as puppies, they're not going to bite as dogs,
Yeah.
where you want to see flashes from the rookies when they're younger and not great.
Hmm.
I've seen zero flashes from this front office or this coaching staff. Like
Yeah.
they've done not a single thing this season that's made me go like, oh, okay, like there's something there. Not a single thing. They drafted Drake May, which was like the
Yep.
most
That
obvious pick
was
in the entire world.
yeah, that was the one thing they got right, but it's like again, what else were you gonna do there? Because Caleb and Jaden were already off the board.
Yeah. Well, just also the fact that like they have objectively fucked up every single part of this season for Drake May. And
Yeah.
yet Drake May is just so good that he's able to like just overcome it and just develop and be good anyway. He's like just going to be one of those guys who's going to be good no matter where you put him. But like you have not done him any favors, not a single favor this entire
Yeah.
season. Yeah. I don't I'll just start going off if we spend more time on this cuz I just yeah. They just better fucking lose this weekend. I swear to fucking God, if they beat the Bills backups, I will kill somebody in New England. Oh man, I'm gonna be fucking furious. Good take. I had the Lions over 10.5 wins and Seattle over 7.5 wins as my preseason locks for gambling. And the Lions obviously have 14 right now. Seattle does have 8, so both of those hit. Bad take. Literally any single thing I said about the Las Vegas Raiders. Just all of it wholesale. I had the Raiders as a wild card team. I said the defense could potentially be nasty this season. Like literally the only thing I got right about the Raiders this season is that they were going to lead the league in roughing the passer penalties. And I
I
was
was just so stunned by that one. And I had nothing for you on that.
but like let me just put it this way though is that if I would have done all of that analysis and just changed the team from the Raiders to the Broncos, I think you would have looked at me the same way this preseason and I would have been right because the Broncos defense is pretty good. They're not, I wouldn't say they're nasty, but they're pretty good defense and they're very likely going to be a playoff team, a wild
No.
card. So like, I'm not going to defend myself too hard here because it was a really bad take, but I took my shot because every year there is that team that finished last season or was really bad last season. And comes out of nowhere and all of a sudden they're a wild card team. So I took my shot. It was the wrong shot. Couldn't have been more wrong, but I tried. I tried something. Good take. This is where the podcast starts getting really rough for me.
Yeah.
Good take. Matt said that Aaron Rodgers is a below average quarterback and the Jets will not win 9 games. You also said, and I quote, it will eat at you at the end of the year that you believed in the Jets. The bad take here is obviously that I believed in the Jets. There was 4 teams I was very wrong on. I believed in the Jets and Raiders, which sitting here on January 1st, I realize how stupid that sounds now. I didn't think Philly was going to be that great. And I had the Rams missing the playoffs.
For all intents and purposes, you should have been right on that one. There's no reason that the Rams should be where they are, but like out of like sheer perseverance of the will of Stafford and Puka Nacua, like they just found ways to win games because that roster is not quite to the level of the Lions, but it's pretty decimated.
Yeah, my lesson from this season is that when I do my preseason picks next year, I am picking the first thing I'm picking is any team that has a good coach and a good quarterback. The second thing I am picking is any team that has a good coach. I go back to the Broncos. Sean Payton is a good coach.
Yeah.
You know, he coached them up, he got them there. Look at the Chargers. Harbaugh is a good coach.
Yeah.
And they've taken these shit situations and made them into wild card teams. Basically, we openly wondered about the Chargers in the preseason and if they could win more than like basically what we said is they were either going to win 5 games or 12 games and there was no in between.
Yeah.
But Harbaugh's a great coach and he got them on the other side of that. McVay's a great coach. And like the Rams are very weird to me because the expectation coming into the season was that if they were going to win a bunch of games, it was going to be because their offense was going to be amazing.
Yeah.
The offense has not been that good, even with all of the guys back. Like they just got dominated by the Arizona Cardinals this past week, but they somehow win that game because they let Arizona beat themselves, which if you give Kyler enough rope, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my lesson is like, I'm starting with good coach, good quarterback. And then when I'm done with all those teams, then I'm going to good coach. And then I'm going to team with good quarterback and not good coach. But that I'll probably be done by then because I look at like every playoff team and it's like they're all coached well.
Yeah.
Right? Like every team we're going to have in the play. I can't think of any team who I would say has a bad coach. Like Chiefs, Bills, and playoff coaching is, I guess, a different thing than regular season coaching because we'll see how Sean McDermott does. Houston, like I like D'Amico Ryans, the Ravens with Harbaugh, like we talked about the Broncos, the Chargers, the Steelers, like Mike Tomlin is a good coach. You go on the other side, it's Dan Campbell, it's Kevin O'Connell, it's LaFleur, it's all these guys. Like they're all well-coached teams. So that's what I'm picking next season. We're going to write that down somewhere that we're going with good coaches first.
Like even Todd Bowles, who like we've given a lot of shit. The stuff that we give him shit for isn't how he prepares his team for the game and like making sure that they're disciplined and all that stuff. It's just like situational stuff, which sure can't hurt his team, but he's making sure that his team is prepared to overcome any hurdles that come at them anyways.
Yeah.
Something that a lot of these coaches don't do. I can think of one coach that gets a lot of credit that I don't think actually does that for his team. So
I'm looking at the playoff field right now, and I feel like the one exception that proves the rule might be Nick Sirianni. Because they were good. They were good this season, and still not ready to say that he's a good coach.
No.
Speaking of good and bad coaches, good take. I said that we do not need to respect Brian Daboll as a head coach when talking about the Giants. Bad take, Matt. You said that we do need to respect Brian Daboll as a head coach. I think we're to the point where we can agree that we do not need to respect Brian Daboll. I do want to
I
give
would
him.
agree. I do think it's hilarious that for whatever reason it sounds like ownership is still with me on that because they want to run it back with head coach and GM again.
The funniest part of this entire season so far to me, and it will continue to be the funniest part of the season until next week when the Patriots beat the Bills like 45-20 and fuck ourselves out of having the number one pick.
Yeah.
The Giants just did that against Indianapolis. It like an Indianapolis team that's fighting for their playoff lives, and Drew Lock comes out and throws for 309 and 4 touchdowns against you. It gets me every time because I hate the Colts. And I hate the Giants, and it screwed both of them. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Good take. We both agreed that the Bills' offense would be better without Diggs and Gabriel Davis. In the MVP conversation, I said that if Josh Allen has a good passing season and runs for 15 touchdowns, that he will win MVP. He has 13 touchdowns right now, but he had a great season passing the ball without those guys. But we both agreed that we would probably see Josh Allen's best football, even if it wasn't statistically as amazing as it normally is. And we did see his best football, but also it's been statistically amazing as it normally is. So, bad take. We were both weirdly high on the Titans. We both started their win range at 6. I really honestly have no idea what we were doing there.
I think I know what it is. We're so used to Mike Vrabel being able to buoy that team that it was hard to imagine them like being worse than that. And we looked at like what the defense was like, and we didn't fully understand what it looks like without Mike Vrabel there to hold all that together.
Yeah, I think it was the fact that the defense has been good and they added L'Jarius Sneed, and it's like
Yep.
everybody was shitting on them in the preseason. Yeah, I was like, God, if everybody thinks that what you're doing is wrong, I kind of feel like it has to be right. But it was not. They have won 3 games so far, and we even said in the thing, I was like, man, I'm weirdly high on the Titans, and you're like, dude, me too. It's like, okay, here we go.
What's wrong with us?
A lot. Have you listened to the list? It's still going. I have more pages. It's not even more takes. There are pages left. Good take. We both questioned CJ Stroud's ability to take the leap that was necessary for the Texans to be contenders this season. We both agreed while wondering aloud if he was already a lot closer to his ceiling than people wanted to believe.
Yeah.
And really, he's regressed this season.
Yes.
And we talked about that on the preseason pod, that progression is not linear in anything, especially not football, but that it goes up and down and sideways and it does all these weird things. But we both questioned whether or not Texans were actually contenders, with a lot of people picking them in the preseason. They were a very hot pick. Bad take. We talked about this already, but I said the Rams were going to miss the playoffs because of their defense. Yeah. Not my best work.
No.
I want you all to focus on the fact that neither of us have ever hit more than one bold prediction on this podcast before, and that I'm going to hit 3 this season. Okay? So I have my good moments too.
Something about blind squirrels and nuts.
Yeah. And broken clocks. Good take. I had major concerns over Anthony Richardson's accuracy. I said that he would be a roller coaster this year with some incredible performances, but he was going to have some really big highs and some really low lows. Matt, you told me I was being dramatic about the accuracy issues when you picked the Colts to make the playoffs.
In fairness, after the benching, he's was much better in that category. So I
Yes.
think we were kind of both right there.
But for the
No weird
season,
way.
he completed 47.7% of his
Yeah,
passes. So I feel like my concerns were validated.
yeah. Well,
Uh
he's missed the last couple games too, so he didn't have the opportunity to kind of even that out. So
yeah. Um Good take for the Nate Washington Memorial Award for Breakout Player of the Year. I had Khalil Shakir from the Buffalo Bills, and you had Jamison Williams from the Lions. I feel like both good picks there. Bad take. You said that the Green Bay Packers did not make any additions this offseason that scared you. And I believe that I called Josh Jacobs washed in the preseason podcast. Um, I said that he was washed and not a huge addition to the Packers. You said that they did not make any additions that scared you. Our guy had six.
can I just say that based on the Packers' inability to basically beat any good teams, if you look at the games that they've won, I'm still not scared of them. But I will take the L on that comment because holy fuck has he been the lifeblood for that team.
Yeah, the take was that we both said bad things about the Josh Jacobs edition, and he
Yeah.
has 1,625 yards and 15 touchdowns. And I feel like you've made this point multiple times in the past that the Packers used to go as Aaron Jones goes,
Yep.
and they've just replaced him with a better running back.
Yeah.
And it's the same situation.
Hmm.
Good take. I said the Pats did not have the roster talent to win more than 4 games this season. Bad take. I said that Denver was going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. It ain't great. Uh, and the Patriots have 3 wins. Denver is going to the playoffs. Probably. Last one. Good take. Matt, you picked San Francisco as the year from hell team. Bad take. Your favorite preseason bet was Matt Stafford to throw 25 or more touchdowns, which at various points in the season looked like it would never happen,
This
and then it looked like it was
has
guaranteed.
been a roller coaster of a season for that bet.
That was because I bet that too in my
Yeah.
personal betting, and I've been watching it all season. And it's just like he had 20 touchdowns with 3 games left. And I was like, oh, this is obviously going to hit. And now we have 1 game left and he still has 20 touchdowns because he hasn't thrown one in 2 weeks. This fucking guy. And it's like, it looked the first game of the season against the Lions, it looked like it was definitely going to happen with how good the
Hmm.
offense looked. And
Yeah.
then Puka and Cooper Cup got hurt. And it's like, wow, this is not going to happen. And then they come back and he threw like, I think 11 in 3 games. We're like, it's going to happen. It just roller coaster. But he would need to throw 5 touchdowns this week in a game where he's not going to play. So I don't think it's going to happen. But just to tack on to that, we mentioned that it was basically a slam dunk. And I said, wow, I can't believe that Matt Stafford and Baker Mayfield have the same odds to throw 25 or more touchdown passes this season. That's crazy. Matt Stafford has 20, Baker Mayfield has 39
Yeah.
and is going to throw 40 this season because he's playing this week because they need to win. So that was all the good take, bad take. I had more good takes that I didn't have a bad take to match up with these. So these are like the leftover good takes. And I'll just run through them real quick. Matt, you said Aiden Hutchinson was going to win Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously, he has the brutal leg injury early in the season, but he
Yeah.
was well on his way to winning Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
I picked TJ Watt, who probably is going to win Defensive Player of the Year with Aiden Hutchinson hurt. So I feel like we had our bases covered there. We both said that Justin Herbert was probably going to post career low stats, but career high wins, which if they win this week, it'll be the most wins of his career. But this is, I think, the best Chargers team he's ever been on.
Yeah, for sure.
I said the Bears' biggest weakness was their coaching staff. We both said the Browns' defense was going to take a big step back this season. They've gone from number 1 in yards against last year to number 17 in yards against, and they've gone from being a playoff team to having 3 wins. Matt, you said that you don't trust Tua to stay healthy this season. even though he stayed healthy all year last year, and that head and brain injuries don't just go away, which was very true because
Yep.
he ran headfirst into a Bills defender that knocked him out for quite some time. Uh, I'm kind of on the fence of this one, if this is correct or not, but we both said that David Canales is the number one guy we would want to bring in to fix Bryce Young. And I feel like since Bryce Young took the starting job back over, he's been a lot better
Hmm.
than he was before. So that we're kind of, I'm giving us good take for that because he's taken a big step forward this season. But I
I
don't know if
guess,
he's like quote unquote fixed.
like, do I get the pick from anyone anywhere or like out of like the reasonable possibilities that they would have had to choose from? Because like sitting here now, yeah, I'd take Kevin O'Connell,
Yeah. Well,
right?
what we talked about was basically the fact that like Canales had gone and fixed Geno Smith and given him a breakout, and
Yep.
then he had gone and fixed Baker, and we were like, yeah, like that's a really good choice to come fix your guy.
Hmm.
And that his basically his only job in Carolina was not to win games this season, but to make Bryce Young better.
Yeah.
So I'm giving us good for that. And then the very last one here, I said that Jonathan Brooks, the running back for the Panthers, was a stupid pick and that it was a luxury pick that a team that cannot afford to make a luxury pick was making, and I couldn't believe it. Turned out that not only did he not play the vast majority of the season, but Chuba Hubbard, the running back they already had on their roster before they picked Jonathan Brooks, had 1,366 total yards this season and 11 touchdowns, making him running back number 11 in half point PPR.
Well, and to make matters worse, like when Jonathan Brooks did get on the field, he then got hurt again and they had to shut him down for the rest of the year.
It was always a bad pick and a team that had a lot of holes
Hmm.
taking a running back in the second round who's coming off of an ACL tear in
Yeah.
college. It never made sense to me. And I think it makes even less sense now looking at how good Hubbard was this season.
Yeah. You know, like even in retrospect, having taken him, seeing the way Chuba Hubbard was playing, they should have just said, nope, like this is your rehab year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not a great pick for them.
Yeah.
Um this year's draft is like the best running back draft that we've had in our lifetimes. Like just as far as
Yeah.
like the prospect list goes. It has the high end talent with like Gene T and Omarion Hampton, and it has the depth. And I just feel like some people are going to do some stupid stuff in the draft this year with running backs when there's a
Yeah.
lot of
I
good ones to pick
mean,
from.
uh Ollie Gordon won the Doak Walker Award a year ago and probably won't be in the top five running backs drafted. Like,
I don't know who my guys are yet this year. I can tell you that at least one of them is going to be a running back, and it
yes, it
might be
always
that
is.
kid from Iowa who had like 1,800 total yards and 25 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He had like every single one of Iowa's touchdowns this season. He's like a bowling ball, man. That kid is beefy.
Yeah.
Got those big meaty thighs that you just love in a running back. All right, America's most favorite segment for the last time this season. Bolds and scolds from week 17 of the season. It is my week to go first. I actually tracked it this week. My bold is Ricky Pearsall, the wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. Ricky Pearsall was a my guy in the draft, this past draft. He got shot multiple times in a botched robbery back in like August and missed a very large portion of the season due to the shooting. He got like rushed to a local hospital and was in critical but stable condition and had a very long road to basically work back to being able to play NFL football again. And if you read any of the stories about it, he basically every single doctor or nurse that came into his room, he asked two questions. He said, one, am I going to live? And two, can I play football again? It was like his sole focus. He rehabbed, he got back on the field, and finally had his breakout game against the Lions this week. Uh, Even though you guys went to San Francisco and took care of business, My boy Ricky had 8 catches for 141 and a touchdown. Also 2 rushes for
Yeah.
6. But big breakout game for him, and I was really happy to see it. Not only because he's a my guy, but also just like reading about what he went through this season to get back on that field. Like that had to feel so good for him.
Yeah, no, like that's a really like huge personal story for him to like go through that. Like literally probably think that you're about to die and then claw your way back onto the biggest stage that you've ever been on. Like that's some real shit.
Yeah. And to like fill in admirably with all of the injuries and all the guys out that they have
Hmm.
and be like
Yeah.
the main target against a really good team in the Lions. I was like, that's my guy, man. That's why I picked him, is that he can basically catch anything. He's got like whatever that stick tack stuff is. He has that like permanently glued onto his hands because he had the best. People were like, oh, yeah, Jalen Polk has the best hands in the draft. I was like, he absolutely does not because Ricky Pearsall exists. And he's actually a guy I forgot to mention
Yeah.
when I was talking about how pissed off I was that we took Jalen Polk because he was another guy drafted in that range that
Yeah.
we could have grabbed. So mad. Who's your bold before I start crying?
Cam Akers. I'm going to preface this by saying this is not me shitting on Sam Darnold. Um, Sam Darnold has done a lot of great things this year and is responsible for them largely being in the position they were in. However, that third down to close out the Green Bay Packers, uh, Sam Darnold throws that ball in the dirt, essentially, to Cam Akers, who, mind you, Cam Akers is not only a running back, but like not one that's particularly known for his hands. Um, and you throw a ball at a guy's ankles, and there's very few running backs in the history of the league, like LT and Reggie Bush and maybe a few others, that you expect them to just be able to make that catch. But Cam Akers is the one who closed out that game. Like him catching that ball and getting that first down was the difference between them winning that game and the Packers getting a few more yards and getting into field goal range and winning by one. It was pretty much that black and white in that scenario. So, uh, a guy who was once well liked running back prospect and showed some flashes, tore his Achilles, came back probably too quickly, and never really got back to his like full potential. Kind of became a joke for a while. To kind of have that moment, I think that's really cool for him to have.
Yeah, I think people forget how good he was with the Rams before he tore his Achilles.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of got usurped by Kyron Williams and wasn't the same guy anymore. So they're like, we don't really have any use for you. And then O'Connell, the head coach of the Vikings, who previously was the offensive coordinator for the Rams, was like, I got a
Hmm.
role for you. Come over here. So it's good to see him doing well. Okay. My scold for week 17 is just anybody who fucked you in your fantasy playoffs. For anybody out there listening who had a guy who's like a must start who just absolutely did not show up for you in any round of the fantasy playoffs, uh, that's my scold. But especially guys who no showed the championship this past weekend, there were a few of them. Devon, Achan, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Joe Mixon, Terry McLaurin, who is on my team, and I still somehow found a way to win. Isaiah Pacheco, James Conner, and especially Cooper Kupp. I have like a special fuck you for Cooper Kupp because he just posted one of the most epically bad fantasy football playoffs for any guy who's considered a star player. His 3 week fantasy, like, so the vast majority of fantasy football playoffs are 15, 16, 17. for like week 15, 16, 17. In those 3 weeks, Cooper Kupp posted fantasy scores of 0, 3.9, and 3.4. And if you had Cooper Kupp, you were probably starting Cooper Kupp in all of those games, even after he posted a 0 the first week of the fantasy. I mean, honestly, if you had Cooper Kupp and you were starting him, you probably didn't make it to the second round to start him again. But I just, come on, guys. You let us all down. My wide receivers were awful in my championship matchup. And I said this in the opening, but literally the only reason I won the fantasy football championship is because Kevin is a silly goose and decided to start Geno Smith instead of Jared Goff. And Geno Smith put up 8.3 points. He's another one that belongs on this list because he was a no-show for fantasy championships. And so all of these guys are just out here failing all over the place. Matt, do you know who the number 4 fantasy scorer for week 17 was this year?
I do not.
It was Drew Lock. So number 1 in the championship was Burrow with 37 points. T. Higgins had 35. Baker had about 35. Drew Lock, 34.36, just ahead of Jaden Daniels. So like Drew Lock is out here dropping big points, helping people win fantasy championships for it. You know, if there was even one person out there who was desperate enough to start Drew freaking Lock. And like our superstar players that we drafted in the first couple rounds of the playoffs, or our star players who we drafted in the first couple rounds of the draft are like not showing up. So middle fingers to those guys. Who's your scold week 17?
Jerry Jones, due to the reports that this man is considering bringing back Mike McCarthy, for another contract as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I personally would love that because that just means they're going to revel in mediocrity. But the logic in that decision is certainly leaves something to be desired.
Did you see where he was in Philly and all the fans were like sarcastically praising him, the Philly fans, and they're like, keep it up, Jerry, do a great job. And he was just like, oh, yeah, no problem, I'm doing my best. I can't tell if he knew they were being sarcastic or not.
I don't think he could, because I don't think anyone is ever straight with him.
I really don't know. All right, gambling picks for week 18. So 2 things here. 1, we are up just about 6 units on the season. And we bet 5 units per week or 4 units per week, whatever. So no matter what happens here, even if we lose all 5 bets, we're going to finish positive in this segment for the season, which I think that's quite the accomplishment, considering that we forced ourselves to make picks for Thursday night football games this entire year. So even if we lose all 5 of these bets, we're still going to finish up. We're up 137.47 total, and we're betting $100 a week. So we're going to finish up no matter what.
Yeah.
But we are going to try to finish strong for you guys with week 18 picks. The other thing here is just to mention that I hate betting on week 18. We're going to do it. We're going to make picks here, but God, I hate it so much because it's just so hard to know, like, who is actually starting their players, who's resting, who's actually going to show up. Like, even in games where it's important for both teams, it's like Bengals Steelers this week. Bengals desperately need to win in order to make the playoffs or even have a chance to make the playoffs. Steelers need to win for seeding purposes. But do the Steelers actually care about seeding? Or would they rather rest like TJ Watt and give him another week off? Like it's just impossible to know that. So it's very hard to bet on some of these games. But what we're going to do, because there is no Thursday night football this week, is we are both just going to make 2 picks for the weekend. So there are 2 games Saturday and then the whole slate on Sunday. And you can pick any 2 games, Matt, or any props or whatever you want to pick, but we got to do two bets. So you get to go first. You pick one and then I'll pick one and then we'll go back to you.
I'm gonna go with for my first one that Bengals Steelers game. I'm gonna take Jamar Chase over 92 and a half yards. That's minus 115. Not betting against him and Joe Burrow in that situation to produce. Uh the outcome of the game, obviously, who knows? But man, when uh when those guys come out swinging, I'm not betting against that.
Yeah, I'm actually going with the same game for my pick, but I'm going to take the Bengals -2 at the Steelers. The first game on Saturday is the Cleveland Browns at the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 17 and a half over the Cleveland Browns right now. If the Ravens win that game, they lock up the division. It's done. I think if they do lock up the division before Pittsburgh takes the field, that there's not as much of like a sense of urgency for Pittsburgh to try to beat Cincy or like actually beat Cincy. And I could
Mhm.
just see us getting to the point where it's like game time decision, 8 o'clock on Saturday. TJ Watt is not going to play.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, this line goes from Bengals -2 to Bengals like 6.5.
Yeah, I
So
mean if they pull like TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick, then
Russell Wilson, George Pickens, like I could
yeah,
just see them just being like, we
yeah,
don't care who we play in the first round. We'd rather have the time off,
yeah,
especially because this is a Saturday short rest. But even if these two teams are fully healthy and everybody plays, I'm still comfortable taking the Bengals because the Bengals are in a way more desperate position than the Steelers are.
yeah.
The
I
Steelers have
agree.
clinched. Yeah, the Steelers have clinched and they're just kind of playing for seeding. The Bengals have to win this game or their season's over. And even if they do win, their season's probably over because they need the Broncos and the Dolphins to lose on Sunday. But you have no hope if you don't get this one. And they've kind of been playing backed into a corner for a while now. What is your second pick for this weekend?
So I'm gonna go to the very last game of this regular season. The Vikings in Detroit. And the over under is set at 56 and a half, and I'm gonna take that over. It's minus 110.
That is a shitload of points.
I I'm well aware of that, and I have seen how many points these two teams have put up, and I don't think it's high enough.
Yeah. What was, I guess the Lions and the San Francisco 49ers just finished at 74
Yeah,
the other day. So, um,
that is was nowhere near as high scoring as the Lions and Bills. So
yeah,
I'm
that's
not.
fair. Very fair.
Yeah,
My second pick, I'm going to go against my better judgment here and take a player prop for this weekend. I'm going to take Baker Mayfield, the Bake Show, to throw over 1.5 touchdowns this weekend. He has to play because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have to win this game to lock up the NFC South
yep,
and a playoff spot. Uh, so he's going to be playing because the Falcons game is on at the same time. And I could basically like see a world where, if the Falcons aren't doing well, then the Buccaneers like pull their guys or whatever. But they're going to go balls to the walls here to beat New Orleans. And the spread is like 13 and a half. And while I'm not super comfortable like taking any of these massive spreads this weekend, because they're just like the biggest spreads of the whole year,
yeah,
I don't love that. But Baker has 39 touchdowns in 16 games. It's more than two per game. I like him to tear apart this defense. So we're going to go over 1.5 touchdowns. That's minus 175. So it's not great odds, but in a weekend where who knows what the hell is going to happen, I will take that.
yeah,
So for the long shot bet of the week, part of me wants to pick like one of these silly upsets because one of these favorites that everybody thinks is going to win because it's like it's going to be like someone like the Falcons where it's like, oh man, the Falcons like have to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. So we're all going to bet on the Falcons. And then the Carolina Mad Cats are just going to beat them anyway. It's going to be something silly like that. It's hard to pick which game that's going to be. So what we're going to do is go back to a first touchdown scorer, and we're just going to say Jamar Chase scores the first touchdown of the Bengals Steelers game. That is plus 550. Although I do think the Mad Cats are going to win this weekend, and that's plus 340. So if you guys want a backup bet and don't want to go with a player prop, there's a good one for you. But that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com, and you can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It is a long name, but you can't miss it. Thank you all for hanging out with us for what is soon to be 18 weeks of NFL football. Matt and I will be back next Thursday, which is January 9th, with the NFL Super Cash Grab Wild Card Weekend preview, where we preview all 6 games, give you picks, give you gambling advice for the playoffs. I think last year I tied like our best playoff record with I think I was like 14-3, and you were right behind me at like 13-4 last season, if I remember correctly. But we always do really well during the playoffs on this podcast. Like we've always done good, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. I'm ready for NFL playoffs as long as the Patriots lose this weekend. Because if we don't, I will be furious. But all right, my friend, I will see you next week for NFL playoffs.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye, Mom.
Bye, Robin.